Okay, let's jump right in. Picture this. It's well before sunrise, the morning fog is still heavy on the ground, and we find ourselves at a quiet dairy farm that honestly looks pretty much exactly like it did a whole century ago. We're going to explore one of the absolute last family-owned cheese factories left in America. In this explainer, we're pulling back the curtain to show you exactly how a deeply rooted, highly sensory craft like this doesn't just make food, it actually sustains the lifeblood of an entire community. Every great cheese begins with something simple: milk, patience, and someone willing to wait. Just think about that for a second. Imagine these warm, amber lights reflecting off massive copper vats, and rows upon rows of silent cheese wheels sitting heavily on wooden shelves. That quote perfectly captures what the story is really about. We're not just looking at a production line here. We are diving into the true, literal value of time and the kind of magic that happens when someone is actually willing to just wait. Part 1. The Morning Milk. Before sunrise. Take a moment and try to imagine the intensely rich, complex smell of these cool, heavy spaces. It's milk, it's wood, it's aging cheese. When the master cheesemaker opens that heavy wooden door to start the day, you don't hear this loud symphony of computerized machinery. It's incredibly quiet. The thick brick walls of the building actually act like a natural temperature regulator, keeping that dawn air perfectly still and cool. It's a space filled only with the most foundational sense and basic tools of a craft that just hasn't changed all that much. 130 years. Think about that number. That is exactly how long this meticulously detailed practice has survived within one single American family. We are talking about a completely unbroken chain of knowledge passing through 4 and now going on 5 generations of artisans. They aren't just handing over a business, right? They are fiercely guarding these dog-eared handwritten recipes, passing down the secrets of natural cultures from parent to child for over a century. Moving on to part 2, a century of tradition, generations of craft. The evolution of this family is just such a great slice of American history. Way back in the late 1800s, long before everyone had a refrigerator, the founders started making cheese purely out of necessity, basically just preserving local milk so the neighboring farmers wouldn't see their daily labor spoil. Then, fast forward to the mid-20th century, and that purely practical setup had transformed into this bustling, vital hub. It was the gathering place where farmers dropped off milk and the whole community crossed paths. And today, the 4th and 5th generations are standing in those exact same rooms, protecting those exact same antique techniques. You could taste where it came from. It tasted like the land around us. This is a quote from a longtime customer, and it perfectly hits on a concept the culinary world calls terroir. It's a French word that basically means the taste of a place. Honestly, we've largely lost this in our modern grocery aisles. But regional flavors used to be a literal, edible reflection of the local soil, the seasonal rain, the specific grass the cows ate. When every farming town had its own cheesemaker, the cheese was a physical manifestation of that specific town. All right, part 3, the art of patience. No shortcuts. Listen, there are absolutely zero shortcuts here. Heating the milk in copper vats, adding cultures and rennet, cutting the curds, pressing the blocks, hand salting every single inch, and then the waiting, the aging on wooden shelves. Every step demands intense physical labor and deep intuitive knowledge. Just to give you an idea of the scale, it takes roughly 100 pounds of fresh milk to yield just one 10-pound wheel of cheese. It's a grueling, highly sensory art form where the maker has to rely entirely on their touch, smell, and sight to know when those curds are perfectly ready. And then you leave the hot, humid air above the copper vats and step into the quiet cool of the aging room. This is where the real magic happens. It's this hidden, highly controlled environment that demands a totally different kind of patience. Down here, hundreds of heavy cheese wheels are turned completely by hand. Natural rinds are meticulously brushed to keep the wrong kinds of mold away, and time is just allowed to slowly, beautifully deepen the flavor profile over months or even years. The cheesemaker actually summed this up perfectly. You don't make great cheese in a day. You create the conditions and let time do the rest. We live in a world where everything is 2-day shipping and on-demand streaming, right? But this entirely shatters that expectation. You cannot force excellence. You have to cultivate it. It's basically a masterclass in trusting the process. Which brings us to part 4, the industrial shift, a modern reality. We are really looking at 2 entirely different food systems existing simultaneously today. On one side, you have this small batch approach, hand-turned, highly time-intensive, using raw milk to get that uniquely local flavor, that terroir we talked about. On the other side, you have large-scale production, heavily optimized for blinding speed, deeply processed for long shelf life, and engineered so every single block tastes exactly the same. The demands of the mass-market grocery store have fundamentally changed what we eat, trading away regional character for hyper-efficient uniformity. And because of that, the modern era has brought a really brutal set of pressures. These artisans are fighting a serious uphill battle today. They're up against the absolute dominance of large-scale production, intense supermarket competition, and crazy rising operational costs. But the biggest gut punch? It's the rapid decline of the small neighboring dairy farms they actually rely on for their raw milk. The heartbreaking result is that you see more and more abandoned rural dairy facilities dotting the American landscape.
Factories make cheese faster. Tradition makes cheese memorable. That observation from the owner really grounds us back in the human element of all this. It draws such a sharp, clear line between the unrelenting speed of modern industry and the lasting emotional impact of actual artisanal care.
Part 5. The Future of Flavor. What comes next? So why does this matter? Well, this family is doing way more than just making a food product. They are a cultural and economic pillar. Culturally, they are protecting historic recipes, teaching classes, and hosting tastings that literally preserve local history. Economically, they are an absolute lifeline. They work directly with the remaining local dairy farmers, support regional farmers markets, and bring in visitors that fuel the local microeconomy. They are the beating heart of their region. But that brings up this huge existential question that kind of quietly hovers over these old cheese caves. Who is going to make the cheese tomorrow?
The future is definitely not guaranteed. The younger generation in this family is facing an overwhelming challenge. First off, they have to decide if they even want to carry this incredibly heavy mantle. If they do step up, they have to commit years of their life to mastering sensory techniques that you just can't learn from reading a book. Plus, they have to walk this crazy tightrope, balancing ancient raw milk traditions with super strict modern food regulations. It's the weight of a 130-year-old legacy resting squarely on their shoulders.
Imagine it's the end of the day. The factory lights dim, and this heavy, profound silence settles back over the rows of patiently aging cheese. The copper vats are scrubbed perfectly clean, the air cools down again, and the final cheese wheel of the day is carefully placed onto its wooden shelf, left alone in the dark to slowly become something extraordinary. Great cheese is not rushed. It is shaped by land, time, and the hands of people who understand patience. Just like any great legacy, it cannot be rushed. And as long as this family persists, a vital, living piece of American farming heritage is going to continue ripening in those quiet rooms. So, I want to leave you with this one final thought. As convenience continues to aggressively accelerate our food system, what other regional flavors, what other historical traditions are we willing to just let disappear in the name of speed? I really encourage you to consider the hidden costs of our hyper-efficient grocery aisles and take a look at the unique, handcrafted legacies that are worth preserving in your own community. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll see you next time.